Welcome back. This is Arise News. You're watching the morning show with me, Biola Labi. Gossy Ukanwoke is a higher education investor who supports access to learning and education for young people in underserved community. He has worked with African governments on the development of policies to assist in creating better access, quality, and relevance of learning in higher education institutions. This young entrepreneur is the founder of Benin American University, which is Nigeria's first private online university. Launched in late 2012, the school allows students to access their classes at any time of the day with any internet-enabled device. As a son of two teachers, Gossy says he is driven by his passion to use technology to solve social problems. Gossy, welcome on the show.
Thank you.
So, in your introduction, we said you were setting up universities when some of your classmates were still in one. Tell us, how long ago did you start your business and how old were you at the time?
It was 2012, and I was 24 then, just 23 to 24 then.
So you had just graduated from university?
Just about, yes.
So why was it important to you to start a university right after you had just walked out of one?
So, I grew up here, spent all my early years here, and had to leave the country at the time to get an education. Not because I didn't want to study here, but because there were simply no spaces for me at the time I wanted to study. So in 2012, I just had the realization that that same problem existed still.
So where did you end up going to school?
So I went to the American University of Cyprus.
Okay, so you actually had to, you left Nigeria, you went to Greece just to get an education.
Yes.
Cyprus, sorry.
Yeah.
Cyprus, just to get an education.
Yeah, and in 2012, realizing that the same problem still existed, that prompted me to think of a way to solve that problem.
So while you were in university, were you thinking about that, or were you just sort of like, you're like, look, I'm in Cyprus, I'm getting an education, I'm having a good time?
So at the time, I started a social network for students, and many of our, members and users were from Nigeria and the rest of sub-Saharan Africa, and they all wanted one thing: they wanted a degree, they wanted a certificate of some sort, and that's what sort of led me to come back to find out why. Every other person in other parts of the world just wanted to learn, but people here just still wanted to get certificates and the degrees, and came back in 2012 briefly to do some research and realized that the problem that I once faced still existed. So people who want to go to school can't go because there's simply no physical spaces for them anymore.
So let's talk about the physical spaces. If you look at the number of universities in Nigeria, public universities, they actually haven't increased over the last 30 years, if I'm
marginally increased, just
marginally.
Yeah.
There are private universities, but there hasn't been a significant increase in the number of universities in the last 30 to 50 years, actually, in Nigeria. However, our population has exploded.
Yeah.
How many public universities do we have in Nigeria today?
Because there are a few new ones that have been opened over the last 1 or 2 years, but in total we have about 151 universities.
We have about 151, and 70% of our population is under the age of 35. So on average, how many students a year actually get into those universities?
So into universities, into colleges of education, polytechnics, all institutions of higher learning, about 540,000.
And then we have about how many graduates every year?
They're about same amount, about 500,000 as well.
Okay.
So about 500,000 leave, and then you have to replace that number. So that's how you have the capacity that the institutions can take per year.
Okay. So about 500,000 leave, 500,000 go in, and about 500,000 are left behind.
Yeah, because about 1.5 million students take the university entrance examination.
The university entrance exam. They take JAM.
Yeah.
Right? So about 1.2 million every
1.5
every year take JAM. And less than half of them get into universities.
Less than 25%.
Less than 25% get into universities. So we really have an excess of young people willing to learn, because if you've taken the exam, you've obviously feel like you have potential and you want to go to university. So they're willing to learn, they're able. I mean, they've taken the exam.
They're willing,
Yeah, they're willing.
Yeah, because these are the people who actually take the examination. So not everyone who finishes from secondary school takes JAM.
Because some people say, look, I'm done, that's enough.
Good. Yeah, and
I'm going to go learn a trade.
Yeah.
But the people that actually take the exam of the 1.2, they're willing. They're willing. And then what happens to them after this time when they don't get in?
Some people leave to Ghana, some other people leave to Benin Republic and the US and Canada and China and everywhere else in the world. and not a lot of people can afford to do that. So the guys who can afford to do that stay back and wait again to take the JAM next year.
Do you know what percentage of Nigerians are studying, sort of leave to go study abroad on that?
There's a research we did last year, and we just realized about 150,000, 180,000 leave per year.
Wow.
We can't tell how many come back, but you can tell how many leave.
And that means those are tuitions that are being paid abroad.
Yeah.
Parents have to find foreign exchange to pay those tuitions.
Yeah, so the CBN released a figure in 2014. At the time, when the dollar was still around 160 naira to a dollar, in Ghana alone, Nigerians spent about $1 billion paying tuition. And this is money that went through the banks, not pocket money, and that's just Ghana. So you're looking at the US and everywhere else.
$1 billion.
Yeah, about 140
Close, like
billion.
They were knocking at $1 billion door.
Yeah, 140 billion naira in Ghana alone. So that's like the huge amounts of money leaving the country. And that's just to Ghana. And then we have these other countries that we all go to per year.
It's so interesting because our earlier guest had spoken about the consumption of eating, sort of making what you eat.
Yeah.
And how that saved the economy in some countries during the financial crisis.
Yeah.
So when you look at Nigeria during the financial crisis, this is another area where there was so much cash flight. Cash was fleeing the country. So it wasn't like this money was being spent in the country and going into system, paying people's salaries, creating jobs. We weren't creating jobs. So these are the problems you're seeing every day. This is going to continue to be a problem.
Yeah, and if you look at it, it goes even beyond the cash flights. You're also looking at talent flights.
Yes, talent
flights. So the best of the best leave the country every year. And like I said earlier on, you don't know how many of them eventually come back, because they get great opportunities when they're out there, offers and all of that. And so the best of the best who can possibly change the country and lead us to the future we want, just don't come back.
All right. So now you've created, and you're doing this, you're creating online solutions. Today, what is the deficit, the institution deficit in Nigeria when it comes to higher education?
We still have about 5 million students who are trapped between secondary schools and institutions of higher learning. You can't tell how many of them still have the interest, to still go do this. So you still have that huge number of people who want to, get some education, but they can't. So I don't know how many possible physical universities that we can build to take in even 2 million students in 1 year. It's impossible.
We can't, yeah.
So digital education, e-learning is the way forward, for us to solve this huge deficit.
How have you found the government and their openness in embracing digital education, especially when it comes to higher learning? Where do you think we are in that sort of world of accepting digital learning? So
I can just speak from the work we're doing with our other company called EduTech. So EduTech works with existing public institutions to take their programs online, so via e-learning. So we work with OAU and ABU, and we're taking 4 programs online today with over 4,000 students getting their degrees online today. So we
and what programs are that? So people at home that want to go into those programs can do that?
So at OAU we have the Bachelor in Nursing, the Bachelor in Accounting, Bachelor in Economics, and at ABU we have the Master of Business Administration.
Okay.
Yeah.
And those people will get a degree from the university?
Yeah, so it's a degree from the university, and there's no difference between the degree you get from those programs and the ones you get on campus.
Okay.
Same thing, because it's taught by the same teachers, same content, everything is pretty much the same thing. But so, saying that, it means that we are somewhere, we're making some progress, at least some degrees are being accredited to be done online via e-learning. But that's 4,000, it's nothing.
It's a drop in the
ocean. And these are the only institutions doing e-learning in Nigeria today.
Why did you think they were more open? I mean, are other institutions open to it? And if not, why not?
I think more institutions are getting into it, but the process of being ready for it, so the licensing process and all of that, can take a while. And it's something we're still, getting into. So we're looking at how the programs are currently doing, how they're doing so far in the markets, and then many other institutions should come online this year, I believe. And
from a regulatory perspective, what do you think is blocking private investment in education in Nigeria?
Personally, I just think people don't understand education. First, education doesn't make you money for the first 10, 15 years, anywhere in the world. So most people don't have that patience. They don't have patient capital to invest in education and wait for 15 years before they can see any turnaround. So most investors are looking for investments for the next 2 years, 5 years, thereabouts. So people don't do it unless you're like a high net worth individual or you're a foundation or a private company or the government. So,
Or a church. I mean, churches have money to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So they're the ones who are pretty much doing this. So private organizations who want to invest in education don't, because the turnaround time is, it's a long play. Even if you look at schools in across the world, they still have endowments where they still have to get money from trustees and ex-students and all of that, because education is really expensive. And in order to afford great teachers, great infrastructure, it's super expensive. So you need to find a way to sort of subsidize that for people who are going to get the education.
What do you see as the solution to this 5 million? I mean, because we have these 5 million people. What do you see as the future of the solution, and how can what you do accelerate? How can we accelerate what you're doing or amplify what you're doing?
So first is, I believe parents need to understand that e-learning works. You don't have to keep forcing your child to take JAMB every year to try and get into a physical university or a physical campus.
What do you think the problems are with JAMB also? Like, what's the problem with JAMB today?
I really don't think there's any problem at this time.
Okay.
Because, there's CBT now, so there's computer-based testing,
Okay.
so you get your results almost immediately. But it's about people accepting that they can go into programs for their e-learning. So it's usually see people who have actually tried to get into universities twice or 3 times. Then they look for other options. We need to have parents be comfortable to allow their kids start off with e-learning. So for an MBA program, super easy, super fantastic, because the people who are paying for their education understand e-learning. So they're MBA students. They've had their bachelor degrees, they work. So they understand it. But if you're looking at bachelor programs, the parents are the ones paying for it.
Sure.
So there's always that inhibition. There's always that, are we sure? Because it's, again, technology, most people are not used to it. The generation that is paying for the education today didn't have e-learning, they didn't have online learning. So that's
education is a huge part.
Yeah.
Even educating the people that are going to be paying for this education.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's when you can see a huge influx of students who are going to sign up for these programs online. Because again, you don't have enough physical infrastructure to take in the amount of people who even come out every year from secondary schools. Our population is large, and we just need technology to solve that problem.
So how can other people amplify what you're doing or accelerate or join in what you're doing? How can other people make a difference in this space? Because you're just one organization.
Yeah.
We have 5 million people. What would you like to see happen in this space?
We've talked about physical infrastructure a lot, but we're not also talking about the other problem, which is the problem of financing. So there are also people who want to go to school and they can't finance it. They can't afford to do it. So there are organizations who can, we don't have student loans in Nigeria at the scale that allows us to, bring in people where people are paying back over the next 10 years for the education that they get. If most people who studied in the US had gone to school with student loans. And
I was a product of a student.
So you pay back over 10 years, 15 years, as you get into job markets and you're making money, you can pay back. We don't have that here. So you also have a lot of people who are excluded from education because they can't afford it. So one of the key things to even do...
So we're even reforming that space.
Yeah, because even our private universities are not at capacity. That's the confusion.
Okay.
The private universities are not at capacity, but the public institutions are bulging at the seams because people can afford the private education. If we have student loans where people who are willing to go to private schools can get loans, we can really drop that number from 5 million again to, 3 million in 2-3 years.
Maybe 3.5 million.
Yes. But that would really move the needle on that. And again, anyone can do anything they can do.
Yes.
We don't necessarily always have to have liberal arts institutions. Sure. You can have a school for making clothes. You can have a school for making hair. You can have a school for about anything. And you can get as many people as possible, because of that 5 million, there are people who just want to become sound engineers or technicians or this and that. If we can invest in that as well, then we can really reduce that number. How
are those type of institutions regulated and accredited? So let's say you want to start a school for fashion makers or clothes makers or something like that. So
there is a board for technical education. So the National Board for Technical Education, they control that. So you just get a license and then the programs get accredited after you get your license to operate. But yeah, we need a lot more in technical education as well, because of all those people, they're not all going to the universities.
Of course.
There are people who go to technical schools and we have a deficit for carpenters and tailors and bricklayers and everything. And that's a huge market. You have handymen who have very good lives in other parts of the world because there's that dignity to labor because of the education they've gotten before they started doing those jobs. We need to also invest in that. And, you know, by the time you just speak out 100,000 here to this sector, 1 million here to this sector, that number is going to drop from 5 million to maybe 2 million.
Well, Gossy, thank you so much for being here today. Just on a parting note, where can people find your universities? How can people get an online education?
So first, for EduTech, you can go to edutechng.com or you can go to bau.edu.ng.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much and good luck with your programs.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Your investment in education.
Thanks.
It's now time for a short break, but stay tuned. When we return, I'll be speaking with author and MC Joyce Daniels. Don't go away.